Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So today I got a super fun and exciting episode for you guys today, and one that you asked for. Because when I talked about Hyper Neo Geo 64 emulation and MAME 280, you said that you wanted to see it compared against real hardware to see how close the emulation got. That's exactly what I'm doing today with Fatal Fury Wild Ambition as well as Beastbuster's Second Nightmare. I am limiting this video just to 2 games to keep it kind of short and concise. If you want to see more comparisons, leave me a comment down below and tell me. We're going to see today just how close Hyper Neo Geo 64 emulation gets to the real actual hardware, and you'll see here I am moving over to the actual hardware now. If we're getting far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. But honestly, I am hyper impressed, pun incredibly intended, when it comes to Hyper Neo Geo 64 emulation in MAME. Sure, there's still going to be a couple visual bugs here and there, and obviously the sound emulation is not finalized, so I won't really be drawing any comparisons between real hardware and MAME because it isn't done. But as far as MAME Haze's work on the actual software side of things, getting these to play like Hyper Neo Geo 64, it is some incredible stuff. So right now we are in Fatal Fury Wild Ambition on MAME 280, and you can see everything looks incredible as I showed you in the previous video. All of the colors and vibrancy are there, all of the character models look great. It is running at full speed, at least on my system. There really isn't anything in the visuals here that I would say really bothers me whatsoever, but keep a very close eye so you can spot some of the visual differences. And when we do move over to real hardware, you will notice the image gets a little bit darker. That's just how it captures off a real Hyper Neo Geo 64 board, because generally you want to kind of actually up the color and contrast and brightness on a CRT television or arcade monitor. So you'll see here as we kind of move around this area, the most colorful area in the game, all of the camera rotations are correct, all of the background 2D assets look good, that infinite plane has a nice look to it, and all of the character models have all of their polygons, and I can't really see any corruption on anything whatsoever as far as the characters are concerned. All of the physics are there, all of the inputs are there. It just plays like Fatal Fury Wild Ambition. If you never played it before, I know that won't make as much sense. And if you played it on PlayStation 1, trust me, it's a very bad port of the game. But if you have played this game, you will know just looking at it, it looks very close to accurate. Now let's move over to the Hyper Neo Geo 64. Same stage, just changing up the characters because that's the capture I had to compare it to. One thing you will notice is there's not a strip of gray pixels in the background. There seems to be a slight misalignment on that infinite plane on MAME versus the actual arcade hardware. But that is the only thing I could really detect when I was playing the game on MAME versus real hardware to say that there is a difference. The overall image clarity, the models, everything else, all of the effects look identical from one system to the other, or in this instance from one system to the software emulation side of things. And again, I totally get it. No one is really going out there and buying Hyper Neo Geo 64 hardware. So for pretty much 99.99 out of 100 people watching this, you're never going to think I should probably go buy a Hyper Neo Geo 64 motherboard. That is why MAME is such a great project, and that is why I love making videos on it. So I know that you can play the same fun games I love to play and not have to be like me and have a closet filled with massive Hyper Neo Geo 64 boards and games. But from the motion cadence to the overall detail to all of the effects, everything here is one-to-one, minus that slight misaligned pixel strip in the infinite plane that you see on the MAME version of the game. Let's move over to another stage right now. We are back on MAME, and you can easily tell because the brightness is ever so slightly different. So watch that infinite plane here on Toji's stage. You can see that it definitely lines up a lot better than it did on the New York stage, but the mountain in the background looks correct. All of the models look correct as well. I would say that maybe when SNK made this game, they could have made every single stage a little bit more detailed. For New York, we have basically every single square inch of the screen filled with colorful pixels, and even though Toji as a character would more be out here in nature than in New York, still not as much to look at, and that's something that I wish Fatal Fury Wild Ambition had driven a little bit further on, making sure every single stage had the same amount of visual flair as the other. But it is good to do a stark comparison, that way we can kind of take a look at what looks like what. Now moving over to the Hyper Neo Geo 64, you're going to see again those waves in the background, that broken down ship's hull here, everything looks correct, and the alignment on that quote-unquote infinite plane is going to the pixels where you have the background layer as well. That's because this hardware has a ton of custom silicon for both 3D and 2D, so you're able to put these models up on screen, have a 3D environment, but have a lot of really interesting 2D effects in the background as well, like those waves crashing over the rocks. But however you play this particular stage in this game in general, whether it's real hardware or MAME, you're going to have the same gameplay experience and basically 99% of the same visual experience. Obviously on the audio that doesn't work whatsoever, so it's going to be a clear win for real hardware here, but I know that the audio emulation is being improved as we speak, so it's one of those things. Hopefully by the end of the year, maybe mid-year next year in 2026, you will see Hyper Neo Geo 64 emulation have correct sound as well, because Fatal Fury Wild Ambition has an amazing soundtrack and definitely is something that you would want to listen to, and I love this little cameo from Joe here as well. Now let's move forward to my absolute favorite game on the Hyper Neo Geo 64. This is Beast Buster's Second Nightmare, and this is one that I played probably like 50 times in my life. I initially found it in an arcade in Colorado at X Games in a hotel I stayed at. Fell in love with the game and definitely was one of the first Hyper Neo Geo 64 games I ever picked up. So this is one that I can definitely tell when it's doing things correctly and incorrectly. As they move over to the same intro sequence, when we have the real Hyper Neo Geo 64 hardware, outside of a few transition differences here, where there's actually a couple extra frames on Hyper Neo Geo than MAME, there are no differences in the emulation, and that's just something that if you didn't compare the footage side by side, you'd have absolutely no idea what was going on. Now I understand MAME's entire goal is 100% perfect accuracy, but if the inaccuracy is so tiny, if I didn't show you real hardware captures to explain it to you, would you even notice it in the first place? Definitely not. So moving back over to MAME here, you'll see all the zombies rise up. We have all the incredible destructible polygons and the gore effects. Everything just looks great, and I kind of like MAME's over vibrancy here a little bit more because those blood red effects look just that much more red and that much more gory. If you've never played Beast Buster's Second Nightmare before, definitely load it up in October. It is one of the best horror Lincoln games of all time in my opinion. Let's move back to that exact same sequence, but we're going to move over to the hyper hardware. You'll see it does drop down in the overall vibrancy, but the red still looks incredible, and outside of one being brighter than the other, and that's just how the real hardware works again, you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference in motion. It's one of those things. This emulation has gotten so good, and I would say maybe 2.5 years ago, comparing real hardware to MAME would be absolutely easy to tell. This game would not run at full speed, it would have a ton of graphical glitches, it just wouldn't be something that you could sit down and play. But popping back over to the most recent version of MAME, in the area for the boss for the first level, you can see all the fun artwork and that graffiti on the wall, and this gigantic bus is going to come in and plow through him for the first boss. Everything looks again and feels again great, and the best part is if you have a high enough test PC, you're going to be able to run this at 100% full speed. In my tests and emulation on my i9-12900K, I didn't have any issues with the performance whatsoever. But now let's drop back to the Hyper Neo Geo 64 hardware, and again, outside of the overall color reproduction, you really wouldn't have any idea which was which. The graffiti on the wall looks good, the bus comes in at the exact same rate, all of the zombies are there, all of the destructibility is good. And in previous versions of MAME, half of that bus which is basically completely missing. And you'll see there that the hardware actually had a weird glitch that the actual emulation didn't. That's one of those things. Maybe some of the weird glitching in Hyper Neo Geo 64 hardware, and trust me, it is there. It basically feels like it's held together with dreams and gaff tape, might not actually be replicated accurately on MAME. So that's one of those things. Maybe MAME actually runs these games a little bit better in some instances, even if that would be a little bit more inaccurate, but that's always one of those things. That glitch there always confused me. Maybe the hardware just decided to have a little bit of a crisis there. Maybe there was one dirty pin and one texture just did not load up. But being back in MAME here, as we drop down into this hole, I just can't stress enough how much fun Beast Buster's Second Nightmare truly is. I've probably talked about it on the channel 3 or 4 times in the 7 years I've done this channel, and it is one of my favorite games to compare, especially for emulation, because I just know it that incredibly well. And you'll see here as all these zombies run down the wall, just basically pay attention to how they come out, how those bats look, and how these two zombies are going to hit when they slide in, because we're going to be watching the exact same sequence on real hardware right now, and you'll see exactly how it plays out. As far as how the zombies move, as far as the cadence in the motion in the camera, and everything else, I checked frame to frame, and everything just seemed to be happening in the exact same frame with different locked off transitions, and that's basically the ultimate testament of if emulation is accurate or not. If it's going to occur on the same frame, you know you're good. Now, I haven't tried to frame match every single scene from the game, so there might be some situation in which there is a frame drift here and there, but as these zombies run out, everything looks exactly the same, but again, a little bit of a weird visual glitch on one of the bats. So honestly, I think the hardware might be a little bit glitchier than the actual emulation in all the best and worst ways possible. And that kind of is the fun thing about the Hyper Neo Geo 64. It was a failed platform that definitely felt like it was put together with some band-aids, but it definitely works. All 7 games run both in MAME and on real hardware, and it definitely is worth checking out. But when I did the MAME 280 is out video and then the actual Hyper Neo Geo specific one, people wanted to know how it compared to real hardware, so I figured I would make this quickly. And again, if you want to see a part 2 with some of the other games on Hyper Neo Geo 64 versus MAME, just leave me a comment down below and maybe I'll make them. But we're done, go play Beast Busters, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.